contribute to this ongoing blog. And which, by the way, you got to wonder who else is in the, in the same circles as these brothers. And if they are, and there's a couple of people particularly linked to Douglas Elliman, who, if I am them tonight, I am increasingly worried about my exposure to criminal liability in light of this trial. So I think those guys are on notice. And I'm not going to mention any names, but just, hearing, and now I totally forgot where I was going with what I was saying, Lauren, but it was brutal to hear the testimony. It was that what you were talking about related to the clown costume, the depravity. I was talking about the blog, and in that blog post, one of the brothers, and I'm paraphrasing, basically said, if you are asleep, then it is not the R word. And that was one of the kinder, less abrasive things that were written about in that so-called blog. So, and the jurors got to hear all that. And on top of that, saw video, and at least one of the videos was of an underage woman. So a girl at that point. But special shout out to Steve Cohen for getting us a statement from this survivor, and kudos again to all the survivors out there. Justin, just before I get to a little bit of the testimony, and I appreciate you guys, and I know we're kind of bouncing from one topic to the other, but these guys are going to get sentenced. It's going to be very significant time. Is there any chance they serve time together, or will the three brothers be separated? Let's start there.
Before I answer, let me address something from a few minutes ago.
Please.
There are people who have been convicted life in prison for murder. And because of the First Step Act, a federal law that Trump signed in 2018, opportunities do exist for a compassionate release. Now, maybe decades down the road, but there are stories out there of people who are serving life for murder. Halim Flowers, who is now a very famous artist, who was released from the penitentiary after 2 decades. Adam Clausen, sentenced to 213 years for robbing banks. After more than 20 years, built a record. It is never too late to accept responsibility. Perhaps it sounds insane, and I'm not a lawyer, but even post-conviction, prior to sentencing, if they said we are not going to appeal, I get it. I would have done things differently. The fact that the government might not have to invest government resources and time in an appeal could convince a judge to give them a sentence that's a little bit lower. Some are going to call me insane. Odds are they're going to continue to go through the appeal. I know. The point is, it's never too late to accept responsibility. Sure, they could certainly serve time together. They're not adverse to one another. They didn't cooperate against one another. You were not allowed in federal prison to serve time with someone if you cooperated against that person. That actually happens a lot. Like here in Southern California, both defendants want to go to Lompoc, for example, the camp, but if they were adverse to one another, someone may go to Atwater in Northern California. So they very well could serve time together. Now, if their culpability could be different, which means the sentences could be different, which means they can go to different prisons based on the security level. But to your question, certainly they could serve time together. Ultimately, that's up to the Bureau of Prisons, where they'll be designated in Grand Prairie, Texas. And that will come at the recommendation of a probation report, an interview that will lead to a probation report. And I presume they'll have that interview in the next 30 days. And the probation officer is going to recommend how long they should serve in prison. Someone commented Club Fed. They ain't going to Club Fed, I can tell you that much. They're going to a high security penitentiary with razor coil and barbed wire. And it's going to be a different journey than I endured for 388 days in prison, which some called cushy. They called me a tourist. Nothing where they're going is cushy or touristy. That much I can tell you.
Yeah, I can tell you that I think there's about a 0.00001% chance that these guys go before a judge and say, we're not going to appeal and we take full responsibility. They're just not built that way.
You know when it tends to come? It tends to come in year 17 of their prison sentence when they do the Dateline interview, when they're bald by then.
Yes.
That's when it comes. 17 years later, they're going to say, I wanted to do it. They wouldn't let me. I wanted to stand alongside and be together. That's when it tends to come. And even then, it's never too late. They're going to wish they did it 17 years earlier.
Talk to me in 17 years. I don't think it's happening. We'll do another podcast in 17 years. But I just want to, I don't want to harp on this, but we know this, Justin. And look, prison.
Oh, I'm gonna hop off.
Okay, Lauren. Lauren, thank you so much.
My children are coming in. I don't want them to hear this. I'm like, oh my gosh. All right, let's go. All right, so
Lauren, you're the best. Thank you.
Bye, Lauren.
Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
Thank
I'll text
you
you.
so much.
Right,
Justice prevails. Bye, guys.
Lauren's awesome. But Justin, what are the biggest obstacles that they face in prison? They come from great wealth, which is going to be diminished with the civil suits pending and state charges and more attorneys' fees. But is it going to be an issue of exploitation for the commissary? They're going to know, are they going to have to pay for security? Is there a chance because of their crimes that they will be retaliated against in some sort of sexual manner?
Sure, all of those are possibilities. I think the Bureau of Prisons is doing a better job of training staff, of creating programs for prisoners, but it doesn't change in a high security penitentiary. You have people that have been in and out of prison for a very long time who have release dates that might say life on it, so they're not necessarily imbued or inspired to. They're in prison for life. If they go to the hole or get transferred, they're not so concerned about it. There are people who might be looking to advance their prison reputation, make an example out of them. The crime is horrific, right? So you have people in prison who have daughters, who have moms, who have sisters, and they're going to empathize with them. So the crime, in their opinion, is unforgivable, even if some are in for murder. So they're really going to have to understand this environment. I presume at MDC, they've been more isolated and separated for fear that they're going to get hurt, constant scrutiny from staff. They have the issues with Epstein, so they can't have that again. But at some point, they're not going to serve their entire sentence in segregation or in the hole, locked in a bunker for 23 hours a day. At some point, they get put out into the population. And even the most vulnerable or high-risk people like Dahmer were put into the general population, and he was killed. So you can certainly expect staff to be aware of that. Their only goal is to hopefully not go to a penitentiary if the sentence isn't long enough, perhaps a medium, but there's a very good chance it is a United States penitentiary with all eyes will be on them and how they respond and what they do to threats and problems. They have a very difficult road to them, and they only have themselves to blame.
100%. I just want to go back to this for a minute. So I take this very personally because I have 2 young daughters, and
I have a daughter. I have a daughter too. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes to the point you just made about prisoners. Inmates have daughters; they have mothers. Are a lot of people in federal prison for murder and other charges? Yes, but how do the other inmates perceive this on a scale of badness or evil?
It's beyond bad because it's not just the crime. You mentioned earlier I went to prison for 18 months. It was a short sentence. But I went to USC. I had good education. I had parents that taught me right from wrong. I had every opportunity and break in the world. Let me be really clear. If there's someone who never should have gone to prison, you're looking at them. But you could argue the same with these brothers who had access, who had education, who had wealth, who had influence, who had mentors in their life. There are so many people in prison. I'm not excusing their conduct. Let me be clear. Who were not, as some would say, born on third base. They were born with parents who were in prison, didn't have an education, homelessness, foster care. It's easier to understand how they're in federal prison. So not only do you have the crime, you have the background that is just really puts them in a position to be generally disliked and loathed because they had no reason to end up there. Now with the opportunities, the wealth, the money they were making, they just took it too far and they acted with impunity, and consequences be damned, and they're enduring them now.
Yeah, by the way, I live in the community. I've said this 1,000 times and I'll say it 1,001. I probably talked to 100, if not 300 people that know them personally, and I've never heard a good word about them. So add that to their problems is that they're not likable. They're just not likable people. Look, I'm not saying Sean Combs is a likable character, but the guy's got charisma and he's an entertainer. We talked about it earlier in the show. I don't know that these guys have any of that to even try to help them skate by. So just underscoring.
And even the convictions aren't even close. I'm for Sean to what they did. They're not the same. But moreover, I would agree with some of what you've said. And you know what could happen in time? One, two, or three of them may come out and see things differently. And time and memorial or introspection can do some things. But they've had ample time to try to get it right. And I have no doubt I don't even need to read the press releases to read that their lawyers probably saying, jury got it wrong. It's like, I don't even have a law degree and I can say, Dan knows what they're saying. They got it wrong. At some point, they're going to prevail on an appeal and justice is going to be, and maybe we'll see. But today's a tough day for them. It'll be interesting to see the sorts of character reference letters they obtain, how many they get. They can move the needle, but too many of these letters, I know, they tend to tell the government what to do, excuse the conduct, and that can actually backfire in front of a judge because it ends up just enabling the conduct. You can have a judge that say, "This is the problem. You don't get it. They don't get it." So I'll be interested to see what they turn in and if they actually make a remark to the judge at their sentencing hearing.
Wow. Imagine those guys going to bed tonight trying to wrap their heads around what just happened to them because of their actions. But you do that and you're going to pay. And that's what they're about to do. Bella Caval is one of the witnesses. Just a couple more quick things, and then we'll get some final thoughts. But I want to include the victims here because that's what this is all about. So, Dan, to you, these are pseudonyms, but Bella Caval, she testified, and some of this can be a little triggering. So take a moment if you need it, maybe need to step away. But she testified, Dan, that she accepted a drink during a night out with one of the brothers. Moments later, she feels incapacitated. The direct quote is, "Like a wave overtook my body." She tells the jurors, "My whole body felt tranquilized." Then you've got Maya Miller also testifying under a pseudonym, one of the first victims to testify in the trial. She talks about an encounter with Tal Alexander. She describes becoming severely intoxicated and unable to resist. She says, direct quote here, "I couldn't move. I felt frozen." Then you've got a party witness at the Hamptons who was talking about how a friend was unable to scream. Nothing would come out. They couldn't cry for help. This is some of the much easier testimony to kind of cull through, and I did that on purpose. But some of this testimony, Dan, was literally impossible to listen to. So hard that even the defendant's own mother, she was covering her ears. She couldn't believe, I don't think, that these were her precious sons who are responsible for all this. Again, 11 victims. At the end of the day, was it just too much, too many of the same stories from too many people, too many different people?
Absolutely, because it's cross-corroborative. They're talking about the same kinds of fact patterns. And as I said before, maybe as a defense attorney, you can make a convincing argument that one person's lying, or maybe even two. But when you have 11 different women testifying, it's hard to give a reasonable explanation that a jury is going to buy for why so many people would fabricate the same story. And I also want to say, I've investigated and prosecuted many cases with those types of allegations. They're very difficult. When you take one case of someone spiking someone's drink in isolation, usually the victim wakes up very confused afterwards. They're not sure they were sexually assaulted, but they think they were. They're trying to process what happened. And usually it takes days or weeks to come up with even an understanding that they were sexually assaulted. And there's embarrassment, there's shame. People are misplaced self-blame. Oh, it's my fault because I took a drink from a stranger, or I put myself in that situation. And what that means from a prosecution standpoint is usually by the time these cases are reported, there's not toxicology evidence to show that someone was drugged because it's already left their system. So these cases are extremely difficult in isolation to successfully prosecute. And the fact that there were so many of them giving the same fact pattern over many years was so powerful and led to this conviction here.
Yeah. Go ahead, Justin.
Someone asked, what's the difference between a penitentiary and a federal prison? Well, they're the same thing. It's just you have security levels inside the federal prison system. You have a minimum security camp where you hear people like, remember Lori Loughlin, Massimo, people from that Varsity Blues case, no fences, no barbed wire. And then you can go up a security level to a low security prison where you will still house a lot of white collar defendants because of immigration status, for example. Some crimes, even white collar, require you to go to a low. Fenced in, but you're with people who have sentences of 20 years or less to the door, very little violence because people have release dates. Then you have a medium security prison where someone like, Bernie Madoff was, and then you move higher to the penitentiary. And for those who are saying he's going to like a club fed because it's federal prison, I'd encourage you to read a phenomenal book my business partner, Michael Santos, wrote. He served a quarter century in prison, including 8 years in the penitentiary. He wrote a great book called Inside Life Behind Bars in America. And he profiles what it was like serving 8 years at the USP in Atlanta. And if you read it, you're going to think to yourself, this is no club fed. So I think they end up most likely at the highest security level for a very long time. And their only goal will be to try to build a record where they could drop a security level, which would make it easier for them and their family because it would reduce risk.
Give us a name. What's a likely place that they could end up?
There's penitentiaries all across the country. There's Atwater Penitentiary here in Northern California.
Mhm.
There's a penitentiary, Beaumont, Oakdale. I mean, they're all across the country. They're very large complexes. What their lawyers will do is ask for a specific prison at their sentencing hearing. And even though it's only a recommendation, the Bureau of Prisons tends to follow recommendations if it aligns with their security level. So I actually filmed a video earlier today talking about that on my YouTube channel. But their lawyers will ask for a prison, probably the one closest to their home, which makes it easier for friends and family to visit. The First Step Act has a goal of sending prisoners to a prison to an address within 500 miles of where they live.
Is there a federal prison in Florida? I should know this.
Yeah, well, look, I don't know if Coleman has a USP. I know there's a low there in a camp, but there's going to be one there's going to be a penitentiary not far from where they are.
Yeah, and Justin, I think they're going to ask. They're going to want to be together. I know the Menendez brothers were not together till very recently. I mean, is a judge going to purposely keep them apart as part of this punishment?
It's actually not up to the judge. The judge will make the recommendation. But the judge will then say, I'm happy to make the recommendation, get it in the judgment and commitment order, but ultimate designation is up to the Bureau of Prisons. And that's why the probation report, there might be mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and certain prisons offer programming that's conducive for them. They might get differing sentences based on the conduct. The probation report is going to spell that out. They may argue one was more culpable than the other. One might have been swept into this. So you could expect some differing sentences. And if their lawyers are lawyering well, they're going to probably fight best for their client to try to get each one the shortest sentence possible, even if they're brothers. So it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't end up in the same prison, only because the sentences could be different, or the Bureau of Prisons deems it's a security risk. And that's what they're most concerned with, keeping costs down and managing security of the institution.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're going to want to be together. They're all they have left. Justin, and then one more question, and then we'll get final thoughts. I know you're not a psychologist, but once you've done a little bit of time, you learn quickly about life. What is your best guess? There's one brother who seems to be a decent guy out of the four. His name is Niv, N-I-V. Always stayed out of trouble. The three other brothers could not get into trouble. What do you think was going on there?
My brother and I are incredibly different. I went to prison. I made bad choices. He's probably the most honest and honorable man I know. So some people are individuals. They go in their own way. They don't fall victim to groupthink. They're not influenced by what other people do, especially if it's their brothers. They don't talk about right from wrong. They follow through on a daily basis. And he'll suffer for this for the rest of his life. And I'm sure he's ashamed and embarrassed. I presume he still loves them because they're his brothers. But given his character and his willingness to want to stand apart from the fray, you applaud someone like that who didn't succumb to the money, the wealth, and thinking that he was different. He knew that he wasn't.
And this is just exactly like Ohio Palm Mom says, like the Adelsons, another case that we worked on that covered, and it happened here in Florida. And Rob Adelson, apparently the one good egg in the family. It's an interesting psychological study. Dan, quick question, then final thoughts. 60 accusers have come forward now, and I'm very comfortable calling them victims in light of this conviction, even though Howard Shrebnick tends to disagree with me. What's going to happen with these civil cases? This is a once incredibly wealthy family, still incredibly wealthy, but can the toll of 60 civil suits, the attorneys for a federal case, the attorneys for a possible state case, can that really reduce the financial wealth of a family very quickly, having to fight all those cases simultaneously?
Well, absolutely. You're dealing with the costs of the litigation, which is probably going to be in a lot of different forums unless they're consolidated. And then any kind of verdicts or settlements, that's going to lead to a lot of money being spent. And we'll see what happens with those cases. When people come forward in cases like this, when you talk about 60 different people, even if all 60 experience some type of hurtful conduct by these people, it doesn't mean they all have what's ultimately going to be something that will prevail in a civil court, or that would be a crime under statutory definitions of crime. So that's all going to be going through the court system, but absolutely it's going to be a financial toll. But I would say the financial toll is the least of the problems for this family. They have three brothers who are going to be sentenced to significant federal prison time. It's a very wealthy family. Yes, they'll have to deal with these civil suits, but I think that comes way behind the criminal responsibility and incarceration that they're facing and the devastation to the family.
It is a family that will no doubt live in ignominy here in South Florida, particularly in the Miami Beach area. Huge thanks, by the way, to Kate Christebeck, who's a New York Times reporter who joined us for a question or two. And then I think her young child got the better of her. She had a run. And also Lauren Conlon. Special shout out to the moms out there who are also podcasting, reporting, working, doing whatever you're doing. It's a lot, and we see you. So thanks to Lauren and Kate for that. Justin Paperny, all around great guy. And if you don't know, he played baseball for USC. That modest looking man was once a fierce athlete. I think he probably still is. And now he's got his life together and doing well. Justin, you know, juries struggle a lot of times with cases where quote unquote partying is involved. They took basically 2.5 days. But it was a 5-week trial. I don't think the jury struggled too much. Why do you think, and your final thoughts here?
As Dan alluded to earlier, it wasn't just 1 or 2 instances spread out over many years. I think the claims were consistent. The patterns were there. The stories aligned. And it was hard to imagine why they, given the evidence, why they would take it to trial. But as we also discussed earlier, they probably deduced, you know, we may get the same sentence if we plead guilty. They never really offered a plea. It's not favorable. So maybe we get a sympathetic juror or we lose and we prevail on an appeal. And that's the only thing that will allow them to get some sleep as they return back to that detention center. That's the only value of going to trial and losing, waiting for the appeal. In fact, I've said I covered this a lot when we did a lot of Elizabeth Holmes work. Like, you know, she got 11 years, but she believed the innocence is coming, the victory is coming. They're going to yank me out of that prison at any time. And if they lose the appeal, like the reality of the prison term sets in, because you have lawyers and others feeding them hope. This is short term. It's temporary. We're going to prevail. Here's why. And that enables them to get some sleep, I think. Lastly, I'll say those victim impact statements, what they say at sentencing is brutal. Too many people default to, hey, victims got money back, millions of dollars. I know because I create so much content on the White Collar Advice channel, primarily covering white collar crime, that even victims reach out to me. They'll say, you know, I got my money back, but I've lost my dignity and I'm in pain and I've lost faith in people, even though I've gotten my money back. It follows them forever. And we want defendants to try to accept responsibility if they did it, put themselves in the victim's shoes and work to, you know, make them whole. It helps them and it helps the victim. But I'll be listening to what those victims say and I empathize with them. And again, even if they get their money back, nothing replaces the pain they'll have to endure. Not just them, their family, and their legacy is different because of that. And I have such empathy for them.
Yeah, 100% with you, and very glad you just said what you just said. Great time, first time best guest. And Dan, I hope you'll come back for better topics than this one. Let's put it that way. Dan is the author of a new book via Simon & Schuster called Open Bar. Please check it out. It's about his experience as a sex crimes prosecutor, and that's why he is here. Dan, talk to us a little bit about sentencing. It is now the date for sentencing is August 6th. How many victims do you think we will hear from? And will we hear from the brothers during this?
Those are great questions. And thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you. And it's great that you're covering these important cases. I'd be happy to come back to talk with you in the future. I think that, first of all,
Dan, I just want to jump in for 1 second on that note to say that I wish we could have covered this better. I really do. It's very hard because it's in federal court. Federal courts, I personally think that they need to become a little more transparent because these cases are important. There's literally no cameras, and even the reporters who go are not allowed to have any kind of devices. So there's no tweeting, there's no social media. There's only 1 or 2 reporters that I know of, and Inner City Press is one of them. So again, I just want to shout them out and tell Matthew Russell Lee what an important job he has and how important it is because it is a window into what is going on. But my apologies for not being able to cover it better. Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. So the victims can give impact statements that could be, they could read it themselves. They could submit a written statement. The prosecutor can read it. So there's different forms of that. I would expect some would do that, maybe not all. There might be a joint statement. As far as the defendants, now they've been convicted, they have the right to make a statement at sentencing. It's tricky just from a strategic perspective for a defendant like that, because you don't want to admit fault. You're going to appeal. You're hoping to win on appeal and maybe get a new trial. But at the same time, you do want to try to get some mitigating factors in front of the judge that hopefully from your side will lead to a lower sentence. What that usually leads to, in my experience, is someone convicted of serious sex crimes like this will make some statement like, I didn't commit these crimes, but I recognize that I've caused a lot of harm to these women, and I apologize for that, and I wish I hadn't hurt them. And you see that, like, walking the line of acknowledging causing harm without admitting to the criminal conduct. That's the balancing act that many defendants do to try to look like they have that they're contrite without acknowledging criminal conduct. So we'll see if that happens, but that's something that I see in many of these cases.
Yeah. Dan, one final question. If there are victims out there, and again, more than 60 have come forward, but there's a woman out there who's still scared to come forward for the many potential reasons, what would your advice be, and just your final thought?
Sure. Well, I would say it's a very personal decision, and you have to think through what you want to do in your life, whether to come forward or not. I would never just say you should come forward, because for some people, that's not the right decision. We admire the people who did come forward, who testified. They have led to this conviction, and that's an extremely hard thing to do. But I know for some people in their lives, they don't feel safe in doing that. So some people may feel emboldened to come forward because they were convicted now. Some other people may feel they're getting decades in prison, maybe life. I don't need to come forward. But I think it's a serious decision that will change someone's life, both from the emotional toll to them and also the public response to it. So it's something to be thought through and talk with friends, family, and maybe some advisors before making that important decision.
I would like to add on to something Dan said that's really relevant. And he mentioned that they could say something. I think some of these cases where people are convicted at trial, they are advised not to say anything. I look at the R. Kelly case, where his lawyer expressed to the judge a lot of the mitigating factors he had as a child, the trauma, what he endured. And I think, I'm not saying it would have led to a shorter sentence, but I think it would have been stronger had R. Kelly expressed through the written word and in his own words to his judge how he got here, what he learned, what his childhood was like, rather than outsourcing to a lawyer. Yet so many defendants are told to zip it under fear that it's going to jeopardize their right to an appeal. And the way that Dan said it is just perfect. And I wish more defendants would do that.
Very well said. I think authenticity goes a long way, which is why I drive some people crazy on this podcast. But people read through the BS, and maybe Justin is right. Just speak from the heart. If there's any advice to be given to these three monsters who were convicted today, if you're just joining us, the Alexander brothers, that's what, in my eyes, what they are, monsters. Could they redeem themselves? Yeah, it's going to take a long time, a very long time, and they're going to have to spend a lot of hard time to get there, both figuratively and literally. But again, I just want to reiterate, if there are victims out there, if you want to come forward, if you don't want to come forward, if you want this platform, it is open to you. You just have to email us, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. And I want to open it up to the Alexander brothers' parents too. If you want to come on, or Neve, to explain why you think your brothers did this or became this way, to educate the public, this platform is for you, but not before we hear from victims. If I don't hear from any victims, the platform is yours. And that's why we helped to create it. For those interested, we were going to cover Nancy Guthrie tonight, day 37. We're back on it tomorrow. And on Wednesday, Doug McGregor, the geo profiler, is coming on with a couple of friends. They literally use geographic modeling to look for people. It's going to be a totally different look at the Nancy Guthrie case. That's Wednesday. Tomorrow night, you got the legend, the literal living legend. She has been deemed a living legend. She helped create the science of profiling. Dr. Ann Burgess is back because we don't have a suspect, and maybe she has an idea of who they should be looking for. Tonight, Vinny Politan, Court TV, asked me to come on, so I'll be on Court TV in about an hour. So come check me out there, talking Nancy Guthrie. And again, huge thanks to Kate from the New York Times, Lauren Conlin from LA Mag, Justin Paperny, White Collar Advice. Check out his YouTube channel, subscribe. And Dan Shore, the author of Open Bar. Love you, America. Love you, California. Dan, where are you? New York?
I'm in New York, yes.
New York. Love you, Miami Beach. Justice for all of these victims. And guests, stick around 1 second. We're back with Corey Richards' trial first thing in the morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Stick around, guys.